Second piece of evidence for God's existence is, you as an engineer know, that order and design does not come about by chance.
Evolution.
And the evidence is that God exists.
Your evidence is poor, I would say.
Why take what John and those people said 500 years before what Muhammad came?
That's exactly why I trust John, because he lived with Jesus. Muhammad was the dude who never met Jesus. John met Jesus, listened to Jesus. Goodness gracious, man, no way.
What
Do I
is your
accept this
definition
kind
of a prophet?
of floating out of heaven book that you do?
No one's saying it's floating out of heaven.
Follow me to Scientology!
Okay.
Why are you wasting your time listening to a guy who's just gibbering?
You're in our way.
You're missing I'm
sorry, I didn't realize that your ankle had a chain tied to the brick
I'll
underneath
answer
there.
that question.
I was under the impression that you chose to be here freely.
He did choose to be
Let me
here.
relieve you if you're being forced to be here.
Oh, I'm not. I'm enjoying your company.
So these atheists try to debunk Cliff on the existence of God. So let's get right into it. Make sure to watch till the end because I have a Bible verse that will tie all of this together. This one's wild, guys. Super entertaining. Here we go.
What is the basis of a moral absolute if there is no God?
We don't know. It could have been an invisible hand process, like invented by an incredibly intelligent God who decided that we should develop a subjective process for ourselves.
You can't prove God doesn't exist, but you can't prove he exists either.
Yeah.
Which is the same exact ground I think you're holding, is that everything's relative. That man creates individually everything that has ever been created on this planet has been a product of that which man has created. You can't prove that a God made anything.
Can you prove anything in life?
You can't prove anything.
Thank you. Does that mean you just arbitrarily make decisions, or do you look for evidence?
Well, you have to take what you're given on this planet. I mean, everything you have around you, all the elements, all the forces that push you around, you make conclusions. I mean, I'm an engineer, and what I do is I take what I know, and I can make things, I can make machines, and I can try to benefit that which I have, but nothing's absolute ever.
Okay. So you base your decisions on evidence, not proof.
Exactly.
And the evidence is that God exists.
What evidence is that?
Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause.
Really?
How do you know that?
How do you know?
You don't know either.
The Big Bang.
Prove that.
Really?
The Big Bang shows us the universe is not eternal, it has a beginning.
When did that happen? Big Bang?
Yeah, about 15 billion years ago. The evidence from astronomy is...
No, I agree that it didn't happen, but I just...
Then why are you arguing with me about it?
Well, no, I'm not arguing with that. I mean, your stance is that everything's relative. Anything could happen, right?
No.
No?
If there is no God, morality is relative.
But if there is no God and morality is subjective.
Second piece of evidence for God's existence is, you as an engineer know, that order and design does not come about by chance.
Evolution.
Well, the obvious question is there a mind behind evolution, or is there no mind?
Well, evolution states that things happen pseudo-randomly. I mean, how did life spawn out of a rock? Nothing, by chance.
That's another third piece of evidence for God's existence. Life does not come about from non-life by chance.
He just automatically assumes that nothing created the entire world. He's like, evolution, duh. You see, we don't need God, we have evolution. Just because our studies show that things adapt doesn't mean that there's not a designer. It just means that creation was designed to adapt.
There are definitely logical systems where there's paraconsistency, where truth and falsity aren't mutually exclusive.
Like what?
Logical systems where that's the case, as opposed to instead of binary values where something is either false or true, that it can be true and false, or neither.
Okay, when can A and non-A be equally true in the same way at the same time?
If you write out the starred sentence is true, and you star that sentence, it's both true and false, or neither true nor false.
What?
Do you not? All right. If I had some paper, I can show you. This, if I wrote out on a chalkboard, say, the starred sentence is false, and I starred it, then it's the starred sentence is false, but that makes the sentence true. But it's both true and false at the same time. Yes, it is.
How's it true? What's the point you're trying to make?
that your logical system, your whole example there of a professor saying something is true and false, being based on absolute, is not right.
No, I put forward the law of non-contradiction. That A and non-A cannot both be true in the same way at the same time. You disagree with that?
It might not be true.
Well, I know that. I might be a bad dream you're having right now. Anything's possible.
I love Cliff when he says that because it's so funny. Anything's possible. I could be a figment of your imagination. You don't know that. It could be. You can't prove anything. But the law of contradiction is a valid point. You can't just say, oh, I wrote out a sentence that says this statement is true or false. Okay, that's all you can do with that. But that doesn't change the fact that 2 + 2 = 4. That is true, and it doesn't equal 5.
But what does the evidence point to? The evidence points to the law of non-contradiction being correct. The evidence points to you and me standing here having a conversation. And guess what you're using? The same thing I'm using. You're using speech and logic and reason to communicate with me.
Exactly, and you're using that to try and define a system when there isn't a whole lot of evidence for it. There is no evidence for a God.
Of course there's evidence that God exists. Order and design point to a designer.
Well, what about in evolution? How come that's not?
What about it?
How is that not?
Evolution has nothing to do with what I just said.
Yeah, you said order and design. All right, how about order and design in biology? And there, you take theories like creationism and intelligent design, and those are all negative evidence theories where they have no positive evidence for them, only small problems in evolution to back them up.
Sure, evolution is just a process, so the question still remains, is there an intelligent mind behind the process, or is there no intelligent mind behind the process?
You're right, but it's not necessitated. The evolution doesn't necessitate an intelligent designer, so that's, once again, your evidence is poor, I would say.
Fine. If you believe that designer genes don't have a designer behind them, if you believe that a BMW can come together as a result of a cyclone passing through a metal scrapyard, if you believe that oxygen, which is 21% of our atmosphere, if it was 25%, fires would break out all over the place. If it was 15%, we'd all suffocate. If you think that that kind of complexity can come about by chance,
absolutely,
I've got to tell you, I can't be so gullible. Because everything in my experience is order and design and complexity of that nature demands an intelligent mind.
So you're saying there's no chance ever? That there's no chance for
anything's possible. It's possible I'm a bad dream you're having, okay? But the evidence is I'm real, the evidence is you're real, that's why we're continuing this conversation, at least that's why I am. So I don't base my life on proof, but I base my life on evidence. And the evidence is, sir, you don't get complexity by chance. You don't get intelligent communication by chance. It demands an intelligent mind.
I just love the fact that he is having this conversation with those really big gloves on his hands. The evidence points to a creator. It boils down to, what does the evidence point to? To say his arguments are poor, okay, then what arguments that you have more evidence?
The amount of DNA in a single cell demands a creator. How can you have so much densely packed information without an intelligent mind?
I feel like it's just someone who can't comprehend.
That's the argument from incredulity. Basically, you don't know how it could happen, so you say God must have done it.
No, there was an argument from experience.
No,
my experience is, if I'm walking down the beach and I see ripples in the sand, and you ask me, hey dude, how'd the ripples get there? And I say the waves did it.
Experience.
If we keep on walking down and we see John loves Mary written in the sand, and you say, hey dude, how'd that get there? And I say, because the waves made it. That's absurd. Why? Because John loves Mary is qualitatively different from ripples in the sand. I have seen life come from life. Never once have you or I seen life come from non-life. An atheist and agnostic is saying life can come from non-life. There is not one observation of that by anybody. But you still believe it. That's blind, gullible faith.
Dude, sir.
I can't have that much faith.
Sir.
I only see life come from life. I never see life come from non-life.
I just wonder if he ever answered that guy who was like, sir, please, I have a question.
Well,
he's able to make decisions on his own. For instance, I made a decision to talk to you right now.
Right.
Now, God is infallible without fault. He doesn't see time as a, same conquest as us. It's like an open book for him.
Right.
He sees everything as one plane. So he already knows I'm going to make my decision to talk to you.
Yep.
So in reality, this is something that's already been planned out. God already knows which way I'm going, what I'm going to say to you, which way I'm going to turn.
Yep.
So in reality, man doesn't have free will, because this is something that God already knows and understands to be planned.
Good
That'd be
question.
correct?
Very hard question. When we say that God is all-knowing, we do not mean that God writes on a piece of paper what you and I are going to do tomorrow, locks it in a bank vault, and then you and I have to do what's on the paper tomorrow.
Right.
Instead, what we mean is, due to God's perspective outside of the dimension of time, God is eternal. God is not locked into the dimension of time the way you and I are.
Right.
He is in a position to see what you and I will freely choose tomorrow.
Right, but isn't that contradictory? Isn't that a circular logic? For instance, if God knows where I'm going to end up right now in 10 years, would you agree that God knows right now where I'm going to be in 10 years?
Right.
He can see that.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. So any decisions that I make up until that point to get me where I'm going to be in 10 years have already been knowledgeable to God, because he could drop back and say from 5 years he's going to be in here, from 5 minutes he's going to be here, and 1 second he's going to be here.
Right.
So in reality, although we comprehend our own free will, this is something that's already understood by God. So if God really is infallible and without fault, then man doesn't have free will.
God is omnipresent, which means God can be in Storrs, Connecticut and Calcutta, India at the same time.
Right.
Why? Because God is outside of the dimension of space.
God's not forcing you to do anything. That's what free will is. He's not forcing you to worship him. He's not forcing you to love him. He's not forcing you to run away from him. He freely gives you the choice.
He's not limited by space.
Right.
Which means God does not have a torso, a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Because he is outside of the dimension of space, God can be in Calcutta, India, London, England, and Storrs, Connecticut at the same time.
Right.
Similarly, because God is outside of the dimension of time, God is eternal.
Okay.
God looks at all of history at a glance. Therefore, due to his perspective outside of time, God sees what you and I will freely choose to do tomorrow.
But so he knows what we're going to do.
Because he's outside
I understand
of the
that, but I'm just
dimension of time.
Right, so there's a entity, which we will call God. No, I'm not trying to put it into a human form. We'll call this entity God. So this godly form knows where we're going to be, like you said, in any time, in any place, and any space. So in reality, actions we make here are not free will, but they're actions that are already understood by God. He knows if I'm going to talk to you or if I'm not going to talk to you. And by knowing that, doesn't that take away man's free will altogether?
No. If I watch a movie twice,
I understand.
and if I see the actions in the second time I watch the movie, and I know what he's going to do next, I knew what Dustin Hoffman or Tom Cruise or Liam Neeson is going to do next, it doesn't mean that I'm forcing him to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he's forcing you to, I'm saying, but all I'm saying is that wouldn't any decision we make or any action we make on Earth already be known by God? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So although that we have the free will, as you would say, to make those decisions, aren't those decisions by already being known in reality not really free will? We're not making this decision of where we're going to go because this is already predestined to where we're going to end up.
Just because he knows what you're going to do doesn't mean it's predestined. He didn't plan for you to go to hell or to do something bad. He didn't plan for you to do whatever that may be. He might have a will for you and what he hopes that you will do, choose to do. I don't know, it's complicated, but it's not him forcing you to decide.
Okay. I can watch my little child reach out to touch a red-hot stove.
Yeah.
I know that when that finger touches that red-hot stove, it's going to recoil in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I know that doesn't mean I am making the child touch the red-hot stove and get burned.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Just because I have knowledge that something's going to happen
Good point.
does not mean that I'm forcing it to happen.
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
What do you think about Christ?
I really don't want to get into the whole thing. To tell you the truth, I I think I just, like he said, I follow a lot of basic Christian Catholic values. I think that I'm taking my own free will to kind of make different decisions. I've read a lot of the Bible. There are some things that I just couldn't comprehend all-powerful, loving God to think with some other people. I believe that humans are all equal. I think that we all do have flaws, obviously, like you said. But I think that with God, if there is a God, I believe there is, being all-loving nature, that He wouldn't necessarily want us to, Leviticus 20:13, have the blood of a homosexual man spewed around the land. I don't necessarily think that would be a loving God's nature.
Good. And so Jesus didn't do that, did he?
Oh, I'm not saying he did, no, but
right.
Jesus is the Son of God, and in reality, Jesus would be the equivalent of God. If you have that.
Good. So you believe that Jesus was God?
I'm saying if he was, I'm saying. He would have to be. If he's the Son of God, he would have to be God. One and the same entity.
One and the same thing.
Right.
And doesn't his resurrection from the dead point to him being God?
Not necessarily.
I think that if everything in the Bible is correct, then I think that without a doubt, yeah, he would be one with God, definitely.
Okay.
It's like water, steam.
So do you think the historical evidence point to Christ having risen from the dead?
I think there's definitely historical evidence in the area, but like I'm saying, I believe that the Bible is written by man. I think that man...
Dang, he's so close. He's so close. A lot of people like the Christian virtue ethics. They'd be like, oh, that's so great, but they don't want to submit to an authority, sadly.
And is at fault. So I don't think that taking everything in the Bible as absolute truth is necessarily what a God that would give us free will would want us necessarily to do. Okay,
so what tests do you use to determine what parts of the Bible are accurate and what parts are inaccurate?
I don't put it to a test at all. I tell you, if it was going to be put to a test, I think it'd be my own gut and moral instinct. And if I am taking the test of my own gut and moral instinct, and God has created me, then I guess I'm doing something right.
Good, so you're on the right path. But I think that we can get downright brilliant when it comes to rationalizing whatever we want to do. So I think it's pretty healthy if God has given us a plumb line that we can measure our consciences, our gut with. Like the Ten Commandments, like the Sermon on the Mount. And if you really are wanting to know truth, and if you really believe that God exists, it's well worth our time to search after him. Jesus said, ask and it shall be given you. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door shall be open. If you spend 4 years here at this fine university, preparing for at most a 60-year career, don't you think it'd be wise to study a bit in preparation for eternity?
True. If people have these crazy opinions about life or philosophy or have ideas about theology, wouldn't it be great to put just as much time and energy into figuring out who God is, just as much as you put into your college career? Imagine.
What do you believe of people who believe in other religions? Do you think when they die, how do you think they will be judged?
I have to divide that question into two parts. What about those who've heard about Christ? What about those who've not heard about Christ? Jesus never answers the question, how is God going to judge those who never heard about Christ? So I don't know. But Jesus and the Bible make 5 points that apply to that issue. God is just. Nobody's getting ripped off. The only reason people go to hell is because they choose to live their life separate from God, and on the day of judgment, God grants their request. Thirdly, there are going to be a truckload of people in heaven who never heard the word Jesus. Hebrews chapter 11 lists some of these people by name. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Rahab, a Gentile prostitute. Never heard the word Jesus, but in humility, they put their faith in God. Fourthly, the only reason those folks will be in heaven, the only reason any of us will be in heaven, Christ claimed, is because he bled and died on a cross to pay the penalty for our wrongdoing. And fifthly, although I do not know specifically how God will judge those who have never heard about Christ, I do know that all of us here have more than ample opportunity to read the Gospels, to decide what are we going to do with Christ. In the Quran, we read, Jesus is a good prophet, he is not God. The problem is the historical Jesus claimed to be God.
Said to be an internal contradiction is on one page it says something, on a different page it says something else. Like the gentleman that left mentioned about the creation.
You're
how
right.
Creation came
The
about.
Quran
That's
does not
internal
contradict
message.
itself. I agree.
So then
But
we'll
it
go to point number two.
contradicts
Point number
the
two.
historical evidence that Jesus claimed to be God.
Claim. From what, John and Joseph and Mike and
That's
whoever?
right, man. And that's the only thing that's the
John,
only-
Joseph, and Mike. But I've seen this lady before, and she's very opinionated.
way I can know anything historically. Historical knowledge is based on the trustworthiness of eyewitness testimony.
So then why take what John and those people said 500 years before what Muhammad came?
That's exactly why I trust John, because
Yeah.
he lived with Jesus. Muhammad was the dude who never met Jesus.
doesn't it
John
come-
met Jesus. Listen to Jesus.
But doesn't it come with time that things like that become more inaccurate? Jesus' book isn't here. Jesus' book is not here.
Yes, the Gospels
The
of
same
Matthew,
way.
Mark, Luke, and John
The
were
same-
written in the first century.
Jesus never wrote a book. What are you saying? People wrote about Jesus and what he did. Eyewitness testimonies.
Okay, Moses' book,
Eyewitnesses.
the Torah.
That's what I want when it comes to historical
Moses'
knowledge.
book, the Torah, right? Did Jesus believe in the Torah? Did Jesus follow Moses?
Yes, Jesus believed the Torah was the Word of God, very
So
clearly.
then why do you accept Jesus as a successor of Moses and you don't accept Muhammad as a successor of Jesus?
Because Muhammad contradicted Jesus.
But you don't have any way to tell whether or not what Jesus came with is the exact same as what Moses came with, because the book Moses came with is not the same today as it was at the time. Can you agree with me on that?
No, that made no sense
Yes,
to me.
of
I'm
course
sorry,
it
I'm not
did.
smart enough to figure out
Of
what you
course
just
it
said
did.
there. Makes no sense to me.
Okay,
What
do
on
you,
earth did
right
you just
now,
say?
Right now, the book that Moses came with.
Yes?
Do you agree Jesus
He didn't come
memorized
with
it?
anything. He wrote something.
He didn't write anything. It was revealed to him.
Baloney! Moses wrote.
I never seen this clip from her. Moses wrote those books. That's very commonly accepted. Moses wrote them. It was revealed to him by God. Yeah, it was inspired by God. Whatever you want to say it, but it's still him writing. That's like saying Muhammad didn't write any of this stuff. He had other people. He was illiterate. He didn't know how to write.
Revealed to him.
No book floated out of
So
heaven to
then what
Moses.
makes him a prophet?
Moses wrote.
What makes him a prophet? The fact that he was a self-claimed prophet, he was a good writer. There's plenty of good writers. That doesn't make them prophets.
Goodness gracious, man. No way.
What
Do I
is your
accept this
definition of a
kind
prophet?
of floating out of heaven
What?
book that you do?
No one's saying it's floating out of heaven.
Well, then what
told
are you
it's
saying?
revealed through angels. Do you believe
Moses
in angels?
wrote. No, an angel didn't write the Torah.
No one said
Moses
an angel
wrote it.
No
Wrote it,
one
not an
said
angel.
wrote it.
And no
one-
angel wrote the New Testament either. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Peter, James wrote the New Testament.
So what makes someone a prophet? And not a random great writer.
What makes someone a prophet is that God inspires them. And there's absolutely no way that I can show you who a prophet is. If this guy claims to be a prophet, I can't just blindly say, yes, he's a prophet, or no, he's not a prophet. I have to observe how he lives his life. I have to listen to what he believes.
And 500 people for you is good enough for that. As long as 500 people say he's a prophet, we're good. We're golden.
No, that's your argument. I'm not standing
That's
here
what you
saying
said
anybody's a
before.
prophet. Your argument is
Follow me to Scientology!
Wow. That's such a perfect timing to break the tension. I got scared.
So again, we'll talk about what makes someone a prophet. Your definition of a prophet, and I'll follow with mine. You said a good writer.
No, I didn't.
What?
But again, so
She's not understanding anything Cliff said. Cliff said that the Old Testament or the Torah wasn't just divinely handed down to Moses as in a book. No, he was inspired by God and he wrote down the things that God revealed to him or that were happening during his life. That's not what made him a great prophet. It's because God called him and he answered that call. He spoke for God. He heard from God.
Someone who's inspired by God, but I can't show you that someone's inspired by God. It's impossible.
So this is something in your own heart.
I can't show you that a book is inspired by God. And don't you understand? That's why it's so hard for you and me to have an intelligent conversation.
Okay.
Because you just lapse into,
Can I answer
this is inspired by God, this is from God, this is from an angel. Well,
listen.
fine, but there's no way you can show that.
Okay, you're here right now. The purpose of you coming here is to, quote unquote, guide misguided people. I talked to the people who brought you, and they said, your point is not to convert people to Christianity. Your point is to get atheists and agnostics to believe in Jesus.
No,
Yeah.
and you, I pray you come to believe in Jesus, man.
I believe in Jesus. I don't believe in
To get atheists and agnostics. No, I want Muslims to believe in Jesus too as their Lord and Savior, not just to believe he was a real person.
Accept him as God. You don't accept his death on the cross
in
for your
Jesus.
sin.
Okay, but we'll stop. We'll go here. You're here to take people to believe in Jesus. But you just said right now that you can't explain to someone that a book is inspired by God or someone else is inspired by God. So why are you here?
There is absolutely no way that any human being can prove that any book has been inspired by God.
Then why are you here to tell us to believe in the Bible?
Because I am convinced that to believe in God and to believe in Jesus does not mean you have to first believe that a book is inspired by God.
So I'm supposed
You
to take
cannot
you
blindly
as the
believe
reference
anything
between
in
me
life.
and Jesus?
And to blindly believe that the Quran or the Bible or any book has been inspired by God is such a leap of faith. I'm not asking anybody to do that.
Okay, so can we have the second part of our deal? I said I'd explain to you what a prophet is.
Sure.
A prophet is someone who comes with something extraordinary that combats everything at the time in proof of his claim. So many people came claiming they were prophets, and they did things that didn't prove their claim. The prophet Muhammad, first of all, we'll start off with Jesus, who we both agree with. Jesus was born without a father.
How do you know that?
Miracle number one.
How do you know that?
Revealed in the Quran, and when he spoke.
Revealed in the Quran 500 years after the fact. All of a sudden, because some dude says he was born without a father, you believe it?
Okay, fine. You don't believe that Jesus was born without a father.
No, he's saying, how do you know that? You know why we know that is because of the Bible. Because I hate to break it to you, but the Bible was around in the 5th and 6th century when Muhammad was around.
I can promise you, man, I'm not going to believe Jesus was born without a father because some dude who lived 500 years after Christ writes it in a book.
Okay, so then we'll stop right there. Forget everything about Muhammad. Do Christians believe that Jesus was born without a father?
Yeah, but not because some dude 500 years after the fact wrote it, that's for sure.
But then what do they take as their belief for Jesus being born without a
Because
father?
eyewitnesses who knew Jesus' mother, a woman named Mary, talked with her. They talked with Joseph, and they found out that indeed Mary was a virgin when Jesus was born.
So then we take
It's not something they made up 500 years later.
Okay, so then
It's something that they found from eyewitness talking.
So do we take that? We take Jesus being born without a father as a miracle. That's proof
Yes.
he's a prophet. That's proof he's a prophet, correct?
No.
No, that's not proof. People perform miracles all the time, or people get healed all the time. Just because they're a part of a miracle doesn't mean they're a prophet.
Why?
Just because a miracle happens doesn't mean the dude's a prophet.
Why?
He could be a false prophet.
So then why
Miracles
don't you,
happen to
why
false
doesn't your
prophets.
mom have a son without a father? What miracles happen to false prophets? We'll go over that right now. What miracles happen to false prophets?
Man, if you get in the occult, you can go to seances, and demonic powers are shown, supernatural powers are shown. You can go a lot of places on this planet.
How are they shown? How are they shown?
How are they shown?
Yeah, how are they shown? Like,
All right, I'll tell you how.
Factually.
You
How
bet.
can you show it in substance?
You bet.
No, answer.
I went to a
Not
prep
just-
school.
No, answer.
I am answering you. I went
Where
to a
can you
prep
find it
school
factually, though?
here in Connecticut, and I had a philosophy professor who went to a seance. And at the seance, the medium told him things about his past that it took him 2 weeks to remember had even occurred. This philosophy professor came
And
to our
psychologists
class.
have done that too with sexual abuse cases where they convince their clients of a history that never happened. So how do you know that's not the case? How can you prove that it's true?
You got to use your brain to figure out whether
Okay,
I'm
so
being
then that
irrational
means
or rational.
that's on the premise that you're using your brain.
Yeah, that is on a premise.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Why are you wasting your time listening to a guy who's just gibbering?
You're in our way.
You're missing This is my problem.
I'm
I'll
sorry,
answer
I
that
didn't
question.
realize that your
No.
ankle had a chain tied to the brick
I'll
underneath
answer
there.
that question.
I was under the impression that you chose to be here freely.
He did choose to be
Let me
here.
relieve you if you're being forced to be here.
Oh, I'm not. I'm enjoying
All
your
right.
company.
But listen, my problem
Thank you.
is,
Shout out to Cliff making amazing comebacks. It's just that people make such wild claims all the time and assertions thinking that they know exactly what people believe and what they don't believe, and it's tough. But John 3:16 says, "For this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life." So guys, I encourage you to go to Jesus today. Know that he loves you and he's longing to have a relationship with you. Put him first. It will be the best decision you guys could ever make.